Now. And so again, welcome for those of you that are just joining. What may have put you on the path? In my journey, serving leaders in mostly that sit in organizations, in larger organizations, I'm thinking about what may have put you on the path that you're on now. And there are lots of reasons why organizations promote people, and being an HRian by training, some of these may surprise you, may not, but perhaps you were the star player. And organizations commonly do this. They identify the high potentials, the muscular employees. And because they're interested in all but cloning that talent, they'll elevate that employee up to management, not necessarily giving them management skills. And as many of us know, being a star player is very, very different than being a coach. Maybe you were a battlefield promotion. And so what happened there, perhaps the organization was going through a big change, perhaps something fairly intense. You happened to be in the right place at the right time and were pulled up into leadership. Perhaps you're the most qualified, perhaps you were the longest tenured, perhaps you were the next in line, perhaps there was someone around you who recognized your talent well before you even saw it in yourself, or plainly you earned it and or pursued it. Whatever puts you on the path, here's what I've come to know, and this was really the impetus for my initiating this conversation with you. 6 out of 10 first-time managers report never ever getting training when they first are pulled up into their leadership roles. That means that most individuals that go into training aren't given adequate tools, adequate models, the support they need to do the job with confidence. And if you work out in the public sector, it's worse. Most managers in that discipline report never receiving training at all. And I'm thinking about my own story where I worked for an organization that had 50,000 people in it. About 8 to 10,000 of those people were in leadership to some degree. And I'll tell you that 2% of 10,000 actually receive formal leadership development. That is an executive coach or a seat in a formal development, in a development kind of program. I'm curious with you, could I see a thumbs up from you? How many of you received formal training or formal tools or an executive coach or mentor when you climbed or were pulled up into leaders? Again, on your toolbar, you might see a heart. If you activate that, it'll show you a lot of indicators you can use. Put it in the chat or give me a thumbs up if you receive formal training, formal tools. I'm not seeing many indicators at all. Yeah, that aligns with the research. That aligns with the research. Let me see if, yeah, not seeing many tools at all. And here's what else I'll tell you. No matter how or by what means you came into leadership, here's what the data tells us. The data tells us that most of you managed to survive, but how is the question? You managed to survive via trial and error. You had to sink or swim. A lot of my clients that I work with talk about suffering imposter syndrome, where they are doing the role, but all the while not feeling qualified for it, not really authentically feeling good in that role. And they're praying that someone doesn't discover that. What I know is that most of you figure it out. And of course you do. But the piece that's really concerning to me is that it doesn't come without a lot of pain involved. And so, what I wanted to tell you, based on my 30 years, my background, is that the what we're describing isn't a personal or a professional fault of yours. What I happen to know, coming again from an HRian background, is that it's a structural problem. The problem rests with the organization. It's a a design issue. But here's the problem. It doesn't matter that it's a structural problem. It doesn't matter that it's a design issue because despite this flaw, it's still going to color the results that you're responsible for achieving. So it won't matter that they didn't give you the tools. It won't matter that you didn't feel adequately prepared. You're still going to be blamed for whatever your group produces or fails to produce. And it shows up in usual ways. I call these the usual suspects. And I've identified what I think are the most nefarious for. There are several ways this shows up, but again, in respect of our time, I'm going to talk about four with you. What you want is blurry. So you think you've been clear in telling your employees what the expectation is. But here's the thing, their performance or the absence of their performance demonstrates to you that whatever you said didn't land, didn't get through, and certainly isn't getting done. This is clearly, when I look at it through my HRian lens, I can see that this is a goal setting issue. This might be a delegation issue as well, and it could be a change management issue. But one of the ways, a lack of structure, not going with promotion shows itself. Here's another one. You don't have the proper receipts. As leaders, you're responsible for driving a lot of pronouncements. You've got to write people up. You've got to make loud or visible decisions. You've got to put people on PIPs. You've got to recommend people for development programs. You've got to write performance reviews. So again, you're making a lot of pronouncements. You're making a lot of decisions and choices that get published out loud. And with that are going to come challenges that in both directions. Your boss is going to have questions. Your employees might have challenges. Here's my point. If you don't have the receipts or the data to back up your decisions, it's not defensible. These decisions you're making, these pronouncements that you're responsible for making, won't be defensible. You can't influence upward and you can't influence downward, again, if you don't have the data, which contributes to your confidence, by the way, if you don't have the data to back it up. When I look at this clearly, for me, is a documentation issue. But here's the thing about documentation. It's so ugly and it's so arduous and it's so heavy and a pain in the butt. You're doing too much. You're doing way too much. Here's the danger of this one, especially, and I know this again from my background. I'm your employee, you're my boss. You've got, again, you're promoted into leadership, but I'm watching you drive the everyday doing and tasks alongside myself. It creates a particular risk. I get why it's so seductive. For a lot of you, the doing is what got you noticed and what got you elevated up into leadership in the first place. It was that you were a muscular doer. And being a doer has immediate payoffs. You do something, you can see the results typically right away. But when you got promoted into leadership, you really got pulled out of the doing space and into what should have been the strategic space. And here's what the danger is that I see when I look at this kind of symptom. The bosses that promoted you, the theys, which are often invisible to you, but certainly talking in closed door meetings with people like me who work in HR, they're asking themselves, well, if you're going to do, if you're going to remain in the doing space, then why did we promote you? If you wanted to stay in that world of task, why did we promote you into the world of strategy? That's the risk from up above. The risk from down below. Let me ask, could I ask for one of you perhaps to raise your hand? What do you think the risk from down below looks like? What's the risk from down below? What does that look like? If I could see your hand, what do you think the risk from down below? Okay, Rashida, let me see if I can pull you off a minute. Talk to us, Rashida. The risk
Hi.
from down below.
Yes, I think that your staff below you are not developed and mentored in the way that they should be.
Absolutely. Claretta, you've got another one?
Sorry, yes. I was going to say something similar in the sense that they're not supported in the way that they need to. They might also have issues respecting you as
There.
well.
That's the one I was leaning towards. Talk to me, Rebecca. What are you seeing? What did your experience tell you is the risk from down below?
I think they become disenfranchised a bit in your leadership and in what's going on
hmm
because they don't feel that strength and that clarity that you should be showing.
Absolutely. Again, I think those are true, true, and true. And the one risk that I fear the most for my clients that I see falling into that trap is the idea. Looks like I stopped sharing with you. Give me a moment here. Forgive me. The risk that I see with people, my clients that often fall into this trap is that they lose that all important respect, that authority, the gravitas that they need from their employees when they're seen as a doer. But again, I get why it's so seductive. You came out of this pool typically, and you came out of it because you were strong. And some of us, again, are really tempted to go back there where things made sense, where again, my effort showed a fairly immediate payoff. Let me give you number four, which is also a difficult one. Another usual suspect, when it's time to hold people accountable, you hesitate. You hesitate. When it's time to hold people accountable, you hesitate. Let me walk through what this looks like. Again, I'm your employee, you're my boss, and the team is sitting with us. And you are letting me get away with wreaking havoc in your department. You're letting me get away with either misperforming, malperforming, or not performing at all. Know that that's not invisible to anyone. The strong employees, they see it. Strong employees typically know they're strong employees, and they're going to make a way for themselves. They're not going to wait for that ship to sink. They're going to make a way for themselves when they don't see you repair the problem. The weak ones, I'm one of the weak ones, the ones that, again, you're not holding accountable. I am feeling so good. I'm going to hide all behind this. It's cozy behind here. This area you're letting me hide in where you're not holding me accountable. We get martinis back there. There's a lounge back there. I'm going to sit back there and kick my feet up for as long as you let me. And here is the worst part. The rest of the staff, not invisible to them either. They're the ones that are going to have to pick up my slack. They're the ones that are going to correct my errors. And when they see you not correcting what is a obvious and clear problem, they typically chalk it up to either incompetence or cowardice. And I'm not sure which of these would be worse. So again, what you want is blurry, which is really about, could be goal setting, that could be delegation. You don't have the receipts. That's typically going to be about documentation, which is a pain in the butt. You're doing too much. That's typically a leader that's stuck in the role of doer, or you're not holding me accountable. And again, that tends to be a hesitation. Which one of these have you seen? I'm interested in the chat feature. Forgive me. In the chat feature, which one of those have you seen most frequently? Which one of those have you seen most frequently? Go ahead and put that in the chat. Which one have you seen most frequently? And I'm going to ask a couple of you, come off of mute and talk to me about what it is you've seen before in your travels that fall into one of these usual suspects. If you'd put your hand up, I can pull you off mute and have you talk to the group. What have you seen? What have you seen? in your travels? I'm seeing a couple of responses here. Which one of these have you seen? And I'll tell you that it doesn't really matter, regardless of which ones you've witnessed or even maybe the ones you've fallen subject to. Again, I want to land on what is often unspoken truth. These aren't personal flaws. No manager that I've ever encountered in my 30 years wants to fail. No manager I've ever encountered isn't wanting to put up the effort because, of course, at least they don't want to suffer the consequences. I've never encountered people that are just bent on struggle. What I see most often is that people are asked to lead. Meanwhile, they're not given the tools, they're not given the system that supports their leadership. And so, left unattended, we've talked about the usual suspects, which are a handful of public ways, the absence of a system, the absence of a practice will show itself. Left unattended, this stuff can be really, really expensive to you. Expensive relative to your confidence, your credibility, your ability to win followership, gravitas, executive presence, your brand. Let me ask, when I say brand, what comes up for you? What does that mean? My internal brand. All of these things could be very costly to my internal brand. Could I ask one of you to raise your hand and define that for us? Or what does it mean for you when I say that this could be very, very dangerous to your internal brand? Again, at the bottom of in your toolkit, in that toolbar, you should see a heart. Inside of that, it can give you some options. Yes, please.
Hi, this is VG.
Hi,
Um,
Dee.
it's it's just with one word if I have to explain, it's the perception. What
Mm,
people perceive you, what you
mm,
can execute, what type of person you are. That's your brand.
absolutely. And typically, brand is something I want for myself, but what people don't realize is it's actually something other people give me. Um, when I'm teaching brand, the question I'll often ask my clients, what would you want people to say of you if you weren't in the room? And again, I've got my own thoughts. I'd want them to say I was competent, incredible, and all of those things. But brand is something that other people decide for you. And if those usual suspects, I only gave you a couple of them, if those usual suspects are allowed to persist, it's expensive, cost you trust, cost you authority, your career trajectory, your energy. And here's the thing that most managers do in response to that. They just press even harder. They try harder, they communicate more, they try to carry more, they try to prove more, more and more and more and more. But here's the thing, it's not your effort that rests behind those faults, it's the design. It's the design and the way most organizations lift their leaders. And here's the thing, when managers respond with just pressing harder, effort without structure, effort with no support, effort with no system is only going to burn up your energy even faster. It's not your effort, it's the design. And even if you press harder, it's going to burn up the energy. Let me ask, I'm going to pause and ask, what in what I've said so far is ringing true in your experience as a leader? I'm going to ask a few of you to come off of mute again in that floating toolbar. There's a heart. Press on that heart. You can raise your hand and I'm happy to pull you off of mute. And so talk to me. What in what we've discussed so far looks familiar, rings true? You've seen it before. What looks familiar to you? Talk to me, Claretta.
Right. I appreciate this. I mean, it really just echoes, my perspective where, people are so often promoted for every reason other than them actually having strong skills and being a people manager, which is not their fault. The onus
Mhm.
is, as you're saying, it's on the system, it's on the organization to develop them. It's interesting when we think about development, I feel like a lot of times the focus is on like the very lower tier, like the
Mhm.
employees. And part of my mission is to really like add focus and maybe even shift some of it because the employee, if the people manager tier gets poured into the way they need to, it
Yep.
will flow down to the employees. It's like we're trying to skip the people man. Oh, we have to take care of our employees. It's like, no, you need to equip the people managers
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
take care of their teams in the way they need to. And
Absolutely.
then that will just naturally flow. So, I appreciate you, making clear like these are some of the key ways and in terms of what it looks like
Mhm.
when they don't have the skills and they're not being supported in the sense of the people managers.
Mhm.
And, my heart just breaks for the people managers in those situations, trying to, make do in a situation where they literally do not have enough supplies, they do not have enough equipment, and yet they're expected to perform at that high level. And I was trying to process when you said internal brand, but however we describe it,
Mhm.
it's like because you're not doing a good job and other people know you're not doing a good job. And part of what I was thinking is I feel broken down in terms of how to tell people this is my value, this is my worth, this is my impact. It
Mhm.
all just gets eroded away because I can
Mhm.
see that I'm not doing a great job and yet I'm working so hard and I'm putting all this effort and I just don't know what to do. So everything that you've said resonates with me a lot. So thank you.
Terrific, terrific. Others, what looks familiar in what we've discussed so far? What looks familiar to you? What have you seen before, or worse, maybe experienced? What have you seen before? Anyone else? Demetrius, I thought I saw your hand up. If you wanted to share, go ahead and put it up again, and I am, there you go. All right, happily. Let's see.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Awesome. I can share a bit from my experience.
Yes.
Coming from a doer, being promoted into a leadership role,
Mm-hmm.
realizing that some of those priorities you had to, relinquish and train individuals up to kind of meet that expectation for what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Um, can have its challenges when you don't have both support from leadership and
Mm-hmm.
buy-in from the team.
Yeah,
And that even though you could have been a rock star employee, ultimately that damages your, internal brand. Um,
absolutely.
as you go forth in trying to lead the team strategically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but also too, like going into any new role, there are just going to be a number of elements about the role that you may have not considered
Mm-hmm.
prior to uh, being in the role. So you're learning as you go.
Yes.
And I think in my recent experience, I just would have loved a lot more support from leadership
Mm-hmm. Of
in that regard and just clarifying. Don't get me wrong, I'm not putting the blame on anyone,
course.
but in this process, I learned how to better align, my goals and what I'm looking to accomplish
Mm-hmm.
alongside of the goals from leadership because at different times there could be misalignment, and also too you're not always going to get a clear communication of, hey, this is what I want you to do. Some people don't even know how to articulate the objectives that they want you to accomplish, but you have to kind of learn how to figure it
Transfer.
out over a series of conversations without them directly saying it. But yeah, those are the things that are resonating for me. And I'm glad to be a part of this presentation because it's kind of adding that oxygen that's needed from what I just went through. Continue to move in the right direction. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. One more, Rebecca.
I
Please
really
share.
like what Demetrius said. I want to agree with that, and I want to expand on it in a way that really like rings true with me. And that is often that in addition to not being able to clearly explain to you what's next for you in this leadership role, it's, and what they're looking for specifically in your objectives, and really not making it clear, and supporting you in that transition. It's that also not making it abundantly clear about what that means for your team. And if you're being promoted to lead your immediate team, what that means for them in terms of what's falling on their shoulders and then what's on yours, because there is often that confusion. And, if you've been working closely with people for a long time and you're promoted up above them, you're now directing them, it's very complicated in the relationship sense. And I feel like if it was more clear from your own leadership about what's going on there and how that's all going to work together, it would be so much easier.
I'm appreciating that. I'm appreciating that. Thank you for those add-ins. One of the things that I promised you is that I would give you some tools. And so I've got two pragmatic ones that are going to speak directly to some of those challenges that we talked about. And so let me get there. You've seen SMART, right? Most of us were raised with it in our Leadership 101. For those of you that may never have seen it, SMART, I think of it, it's a framework that supplies a net underneath assignments, underneath goals. The theory being if one can answer all of these questions at the time when they delegate, at the time when they give the assignment, at the time when they set goals, if I can answer all of these questions for my employee, then I've supported that work enough to increase the likelihood of it coming to pass. And the acronym is as follows. I need to be very specific about what it is that I want my employee to do. And then comes measurement. Now, a lot of people, a lot of managers, when they see measurement, they're going to assume that means numbers. And often it does. And the beauty of a number is that it's always what it appears to be. A 2 is a 2, a 3 is a 3. However, and all of you know this, behind every number is the presence or the absence of behavior. And so when you're describing what success is going to look like, it's going to have to be the twins. It's got to have to be the twins of the quantitative as well as the qualitative. The way I talk about it is you've got to describe what done looks like and what well done looks like. Why? Because I'm your employee, you're my boss. If you don't tell me how you define it, I'm going to decide for myself what done means, what well done means, and your view and my view likely won't mesh. Actionable, it's got to be viable and doable in the real world. Now, that means typically behavioral, but I'm going to soup it up a bit. Viable in the real world also means within the choices, within the scope of what the employee can do. When I look at this, I think of the Cheney effect, the Dick Cheney effect. You might remember that Dick Cheney was the vice president to President Bush. And towards the end of that administration, Cheney was having a lot of heart attacks. And someone asked him once, talk to us about your health. And he talked about the fact that the job that he held as vice president was full of anxiety for him because he had all the responsibility and none of the choice. So when we talk about a thing being actionable, that's not just behavior. That's also, sorry, my dog is making an appearance. That's not just behavior, that's also giving your employees the latitude they need in order to move the thing like they need to move it. Relevance, that's the why. That's you creating the connective tissue between the action they're taking and the work. The reason why we're doing this work is because of the business need or risk or priority, what have you. And then time bound. This is about putting a container around the work, a finite container. It clarifies achievability within a finite period of time. Basic SMART. Again, answer those 5 questions. You're creating a fairly good net that's going to help your delegated tasks, assignments, goals get achieved. But we know that the world is more complicated. So a lot of us, especially if you're an HRian, a lot of HRians add a couple more words just for fun. Time bound, or excuse me, outcome, end state value, outcome, end state value. Value, what does that mean? When I teach this to my clients at the org level, I say that one of my usual lines, value lives in pain. Value lives in pain. Now that sounds a little kinky, but I promise you it's not. When I say value lives in pain, here's what I mean. I'm a consultant. My value as a consultant lives in my ability to either resolve a pain or accelerate my client's contact with an advantage they want. So when you're giving an assignment or delegating or goal setting, it's not enough to say what done looks like or the why, but what is it that should change in the end state if we've done this assignment well? So that outcome is a little bit further extending than the why, than the finality, and it clearly talks about what done and well done will look like after the close of the behavior. Documentation, a thing is written down. I like documentation because it echoes the contracting phase of coaching, which is the world I come from. But the question is, who's got to do that documenting? And then making sure that a thing is resourced. Again, this is the souped up version of SMART. But here's what I've experienced. My clients, even when I've given them a souped up version of this, still come back and ask, well, who does what of smarter? And so let me walk you through what it looks like in real life. I'm your employee, you're my boss. You invite me into your office because you're about to assign me a task. It's during that meeting you're going to tell me about the what, you're going to tell me what done looks like and what well done looks like. You're going to tell me, because if you don't tell me again, I'm going to decide for myself. And the other reason why you want to tell me about done and well done is when your employees hear this over the long term, they get to understand for themselves what done and done well looks like. They won't need you to define success for them anymore, which can create more independence. You're going to give me the why, and in that same conversation, you're going to tell me, as a result of this work, here's the value, here's the pain that's going to get solved, or here's the advantage that's going to emerge when this thing is completed. Then you're going to send me away. You're going to send me away to build the actionable. You're going to send me away to build the action. Why? Because people can't argue with their own data. People can't argue with their own data. Whenever it is possible, whenever it's feasible, have your employees at least co-author with you, if not author it. Wherever it's feasible, wherever it makes sense, have employees co-author at minimum, if not completely author. Why? Because there's accountability in authorship. If you tell me what the plan is going to be, here are the ways it could get replied to. I didn't hear you. I didn't understand you. I thought you were talking to Joe Jabib. I was looking the other way because my big toe hurt. whatever. It's easy for me to escape the task when you tell me what it is. Hard to escape it when I, your employee, build the strategy. And of course, I'm going to bring that back so that you and I, manager and employee, can shape it and you can guide it and you can influence it, put your fingerprints on it, what have you. When I say that with authorship comes accountability, I want to make clear that for me, accountability isn't just about catching people doing badly. Accountability is also about catching people doing rightly. So if I bring you back a really stunning strategy, that's worth being lauded. That's worth praise. And we know why we praise. We don't praise just to make people feel good. We praise those things we want repeated. So praise has a strategic driver for the manager as well as the employee. And of course, if I do wrong, accountability is going to help me there. So you're going to ask me to bring back a plan, and you and I are going to work that plan. And it's going to be written down, which tends to make it real. It's not a contract in the legal sense, but when it's written down and it's written down digitally or what have you, but in my hand as the employee, again, you have cinched up accountability. That is when you and I are going to negotiate the time-bound piece. So, do I have room for this new assignment in my current plate of things I'm doing? Do I need to move some priorities around? Do I need to, again, maybe have some things taken off while I do this task? And that's when you're going to ask the most pivotal question of all, employee, how can I help? How can I help? So again, when it comes to smart or smarter, pretty basic things we've seen before. But the way to work these pieces and parts is in the way I've kind of illustrated for you here. Giving your employee the opportunity to author, one, takes some of the onus off of you. Two, gives them an opportunity to author, and with authorship comes, again, accountability. I'm going to give you a second pragmatic upgrade. So this one I wanted to give you because it deals with this receipts business. And remember that you not having receipts had to deal with the fact that you have a lot of pronouncements you need to make, right? You've got to make decisions and choices that could get challenged from up above or could get debated from down below. Without documentation, your pronouncements are not strong and can't combat challenges. They can't be defensible. But documentation, great in theory, a pain in the butt in practice. But here I'm going to give you an easy, low calorie, but high potency technique. It's Friday, end of the week. You're looking forward. You're kind of setting yourself up for next week, closing down the current week. Everything's calm in the valley. A good time to run through the faces of your employees. And I'm talking about employees for whom you will ultimately write a performance review. And ask yourself two questions. Again, I'm your employee, you're my boss. So you're going to think of Damaris, you're going to ask yourself, when and in what way did Damaris meet or exceed my expectations this week? And because you're only going to give that 1 minute, that only gives you time to write down about three things: when it happened, and what happened as a result. The second minute, how are you going to use that? Again, you're going to think about your employee, same employee, Damaris. When and in what way did Damaris fail to meet my expectations this week? So 2 and 2, 2 minutes, 2 questions for every employee for whom you're going to ultimately write a performance review. Why? At the end of a year, I need some mathematicians. At the end of the year, if you do this for every single every employee of yours, how many notes will you have for one employee? If you do this for one employee every week for a year, that's going to give you how many notes? 104. 104. Raise your hand if you had last year, before the performance review, 104 notes on any one of your employees? Likely not. So again, a needed practice, documentation is needed. You probably get nagged on doing it, but it's a pain in the butt. But there's a system you can employ. Again, 2 minutes, two questions, every employee. And in that 2 minutes, you only have time for three pieces of data: when it happened, what happened as a result. And then you got to move on. So again, an easy technique that you can employ along with the other this week if you chose to. These are viable techniques. Again, they're pulled out of my own consultancy bag. They're techniques that I teach at the organizational level. They can clarify expectations, and they can help you document without drowning in documentation. But I'll tell you, I'll confess, they're limited because a couple of techniques here and there, that's not what ails you. If your leadership is more painful than it needs to be, it's not the presence or the absence of one or two even really good tools. It's the fact that you don't have a repeatable set of assembled, sequenced, and integrated management practices. That's the issue. It's that system that's gone. It's the design that's not there. And I'm going to show you why that is. So I'm going to take you back to psychology class. John Cotter, he's a social scientist, an OD, organizational development person. He compares management and leadership using this model. Let me ask, I'm going to invite you to, eyeball management, scan leadership, and identify for me in the chat, what are some of the key differences you are discerning as you look over what management looks like and what leadership looks like? What are the key differences between these two that you're discerning? Claretta, talk to me.
One feels a lot more myopic and maybe even task oriented, and the other
Absolutely.
one is visionary and future oriented.
Absolutely. Excellent. Excellent. Others, what do you discern is different between these two? We use these as synonyms for each other, management and leadership. They're used interchangeably, but they're different animals. So what is the difference that you discern? Kelly, talk to us. I'm pressing the button for you, Kelly. Is that giving you it's not letting you unmute. How about now, Kelly? Are you on mute yourself? I can't hear you. It's not. Could you put it in the chat for us? And so let me answer it for you. The key differences are going to be strategic versus task oriented. You said that. Long term versus short term. One really is fueled by commitment, I want to, versus compliance, I have to. One has more depth and breadth when it comes to its impact. The other one is more shallow in its impact. Now, here's what happens. In truth, your organization wants you to be both of these. And you need to be both because these are twins. Each one has what the other one needs. I keep talking about twins because I have a pair. They're 16. So, yeah, They're twins. Each one has what the other one needs. If you have management but no leadership, typically you have no vision. There's no end state value you're running towards. If you've got leadership but no management, you lack the mechanics to move towards vision. So what ends up happening in real life is that managers get their hands on through, Chat GPT or LinkedIn or books or what have you. They get their hands on a bunch of techniques. They kind of, bring them out when and if they need to. Those techniques tend to be discombobulated, disconnected. And what happens is when I use this random collection of techniques, which should then manifest as a leadership outcome, it doesn't. It stays in this romanticized, theoretical, aspirational form of leadership that doesn't ever show up in reality. It has a tendency to stay in this tactical world. Here's what should happen. That when it comes to your management practice, you should have a repeatable, assembled, sequenced, integrated system. And because you have that system, it enables you to drive towards leadership grade results. That's how this model is intended to work together. True, these are different animals. They are literally twins that one has what the other one needs. Management gives the technique. And if those techniques are integrated, connected with each other, they will yield leadership grade outcomes, which gives you the kind of brand that you want, which we talked about earlier. For the 4 people we discussed when we first got together, for the new manager, instead of trying to figure out how he can prove that he can lead, suddenly he's got plug and play ease. The manager that's had to make it up as she goes, suddenly she no longer has to do improvisational leadership. That manager whose team was stuck in churn, a lot of movement but not getting anywhere. Now his practice is stabilized, which also has a stabilizing effect on the outcomes he's able to give. And that OD person who's looking for a common language that's applicable across verticals, now they've got something that's translatable across teams. Here's my landing point with you as we come to a close. I have never met a leader who tries to fail on purpose, who attempts to struggle on purpose. Never in my life. I'm 54 years old. I've been in the business for 30 years. I've never met a person who doesn't try to give the effort, doesn't care, isn't trying to show their competence, isn't trying to grab at whatever tool they can get their hands on. You're not the issue. The lack of a system is the issue. The lack of a design is the issue. I wanted to just deal with one more thing. This information that I've given you in our discussion, its providence is in a enterprise level product that I offer at the organizational level. And right now it's being translated so that individual leaders can use it. Today for me was about clarity for you, because here's what I know. Tools thrown at you, even great tools thrown at you, will fail if we first don't have clarity. If we don't have the solid ground to work from, even great tools will land sideways. If you found today useful, and you're interested in learning more about the kind of system that I described, I'm going to be hosting a small pilot whereby I roll out, again, this leadership work, but again, translated into individual leader use. This QR code is only in service of telling me how to send you some more information on it. It doesn't obligate you. You don't commit to anything. If you'd like some more information, use the QR code to let me know how to send it to you, and I'll do that. I've had a pleasure. I love talking with smart people. With the time we have left, what questions might I answer for you? What questions might I answer for you? If you have to run, I thank you for your kind attention and time. I hope that the clarity and the orienting that I wanted to give landed with you. But again, we have a little bit of time. What questions might I answer? Yes, ma'am, Miss Claretta.
Yes. So I haven't fully formulated the question,
Okay.
but maybe you can help me.
Of course.
And one of the things that I thought was so interesting was when you put up the picture with the two circles, manager, management, and leadership.
Mhm.
Because I think for the first time, I started thinking about when you're put in that people manager role, now what you described to me is literally like two streams of skills
Mhm.
that you need in addition to the fact that you were already a rock star at the technical skills, which is why you got promoted,
Absolutely.
potentially. You know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
so it's like two tracks, right?
Well,
And
let
go
me
ahead.
add a
Yeah.
little clarity if I could.
Okay.
The behaviors live on the management side. It creates the experience of being visionary. It creates the experience of
Mm.
being more commitment centric than compliance centric. It creates the experience of leadership, and that's what moves people. Did I
Hmm.
explain it clearer that time? This is where this is where the tools live. But again, honed, they've got to work together. That's why assembled and sequenced and the right kind of tools are needed instead of just being random. We use them when we have to in an
Hmm.
emergency situation. You know, if they're used deliberately, mindfully, they
Hmm.
create this experience. And this is the experience that brings the currency of followership, the currency of your influence, the currency of gravitas.
Hmm. Okay. So, like, my eyes just fell on the second one, for example, where a manager might start with the method in mind and a leader starts with the end in mind. How would the management descriptor of focus result in the leadership
Yeah.
output of focus, for
So let me go
example?
back to this screen where we talked about we can use
Hmm.
this model for delegating, right? And you're
Hmm.
my boss and I'm your employee, and you invite me in to delegate something to me, and you're going to give me the what it is, what it looks like when it is done well, right?
Yes.
And that's going to be highly mechanical. But you know, like I know, all the mechanics could be there and it still not produce the change it was supposed to. So
Hmm.
this is like algebra. You know, algebra, each side of the equal sign are supposed to match, right? It could look
Hmm.
different from one end to the other end, but they're supposed to even out. The done and done well, the mechanics of that, that's management, and it should equal this end state value. If you don't give me this, you're never going to get that. And if you don't give me the end state value, then I don't know what to look for as I'm trying to work what you told me to do.
Right.
And so that's what, again, I mean by one is tactical and needs to be,
Hmm.
whereas the other one, management is the tactical side, whereas leadership is the experience that people have of you. And that's an example how you give employees both.
Right.
Did
Okay.
I
So
say
like
that more clearly this time?
I think what I'm understanding, because I definitely appreciated how you took smart to smarter. And so with the tools that you're providing, the management and leadership pieces, it is tools and it is practical and it is systems, but it embodies both. It's
Yeah.
not just management tools that somehow the leadership part, manifests itself.
And
I don't
here's
know.
what, and my
Mhm.
bias, I'll be honest with you, Clarita, my bias, my agenda is to help produce leaders. Leaders are they're the ones that change organizations. They're the
Right.
ones that lift other people. They're the ones that get promoted. When you've got to move people at work, your boss's boss, they've got to be moved almost emotionally by you in order to get the promotion. Because
Right.
you know people who are as skilled as you, but they're not going anywhere.
Mhm.
So it's not just the mechanics, because there are people who are just as mechanically inclined as you are, but aren't promotable. It's because you brought the experience as well as the mechanics, and those two work together that create promotable people. So that's why I emphasize here are the techniques in order, in sequence, and integrated that yield employees and your bosses experiencing you with gravitas,
Mhm.
experiencing you with executive presence, because that's what they'll promote, not just
Mhm.
competence.
Right. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Happily. Demetrius, what can I answer for you?
Wasn't a question, more so of a comment. I
Okay.
do have to refer back to materials. Is there any way that this PowerPoint could be shared for to reference later?
Which part of it was of interest to you? If you want to leave that in the chat,
Yeah, for some
I can,
reason,
I'd be
chat
happy to share pieces of
disabled,
it.
is disabled. So, and I never saw anyone comment in it, and I was unable to comment in it and myself.
Huh.
Um,
Okay. I have your name. I'm going to write that down, and I'll be able to correspond with you after.
yeah, sure. All right, thanks for that. I gotta jump. Appreciate. I'm sorry. Did you have another question?
No, no. Thank you.
All right, thanks again.
This is Rebecca. I'd also like to receive a copy of the presentation. I think it'd be great to go back with the notes I've taken and review it and give it deeper thought. I think it'd be really helpful for me.
What I can likely share is the recording, but I'm happy to put a link for you, Mr. Brown and Rebecca.
Hmm. Would that be like with the visuals or is
Yeah,
it just the audio? Oh, that'd be wonderful.
it'll
Thank
be the
you.
recording.
Thank you so much.
Happily, happily. Randall,
Good afternoon.
hi.
My question would be the exact same if we could get the recording because it's
Of course,
great information.
of course. I'd be happy to.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Tanya. Tanya. Is it Tanya?
Hi, yes, it's Tanya. You got it.
Mhm.
Thank you. I
Happily.
was going to say, yeah, the entire time the couldn't unmute or get into the chat, just so you know,
Mm,
I was trying. But my question is,
yeah.
how do you navigate as a manager that you've done everything, you've done all the documentation. The company didn't have a structure. They didn't recognize that until October. I've been in the job a whole year and 4 months, right?
Mhm.
Over a year and a half. But they just recognized after a whole year of complaints, I had 21 documented coachings and complaints into HR.
Mhm.
Talk to leadership, but they have never did anything about it. So you're literally dying inside because I got a team to perform. They're a high performing team, but not without resentment. Like they hate you because you're doing your job. Leadership says, "Oh, you're doing a great job. Keep doing you're doing. Your team they're great." I moved them from rank 78 to rank 32. You know, which in less than a year, which is great, but I'm suffering every single day because they disrespect me for doing my job.
Who's the disrespect's coming from up above?
It's coming from my team.
From your
No,
team,
yes,
though? I'm sorry.
yes. Senior leadership says, "Oh, you're doing a great job. Keep doing what you're doing." Yeah, but I tell them, but this is what they're doing to me every day. They ignore me. They turn their back to me when I'm talking. Um, I make them do action plans. They do it without the hissing, sighing, but they do it because they know I'm going to hold them accountable. But
Right.
I have to deal with the disrespect every single day, the coming in late every day for 3 months,
Mhm.
missing all of my meetings. So I have to keep repeating things. So it messes me up during the day,
Sure.
you know? Yeah.
Right. They don't respect you. And one of the I like Greek mythology. And in Greek mythology, there's a beast called the griffin, right? It's got the head of the eagle in the body of a lion, and it's a trickster. It likes to sit in the road, and you come towards it and it asks you a riddle. And if you answer the riddle, it'll let you pass. And if you don't answer the riddle, it eats you alive. You are sitting with the griffin. You cannot expect anything out of any of them until you unravel the riddle behind the disrespect. That would be my priority above all else. Where is the animus coming from? Until you fix that, you're not going to get far. Why? Because will and skill. Will is I want to, skill is I can. You've got the I can. What you don't have is the will, the I want to. And here's
I
the
know what it
problem.
is.
And here's the problem with you're powerful to enable the skill, the action planning and classes and all of the stuff, all the things. You are powerless to want it for them. So if you were my coaching client, I would want to dig into where is the animus coming from, because nothing will change until you get underneath that. That's the question you need to answer first, over and above any performance issue. And fix that. Figure out what that riddle is. You will see exponential improvement on the performance side. Why? Because
I
they're
know
already
what it
showing
is. I
you.
just don't know how to move from it.
What is it? What
It-
is it then?
For 6 months before I became the manager, they didn't have a manager. They had to do whatever they wanted for 6 months. So they resent that. Now I have a structure set up.
Mm. Okay, so in that case, here's one thing you might
And the
try.
company was trying to implement more structure with all the managers. So as a new manager, me and all the 3 other new managers, we're doing everything the company wants. They
Mhm.
love that. But
Mhm.
we're suffering every single day going in there.
Because of the engagement.
Yeah.
There used to be an autonomous team.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take you back to that co-authorship. They're rejecting your structure. Do you have all hands meetings in your environment?
Yes.
At the
Hmm.
beginning of the year, end of the year, like an all hands strategy meeting. Here's what
Yeah,
we're
we have them once a month actually.
okay. And
Across management.
okay, and I would, if I'm you, I want an all hands meeting of my team, and using that as a way to build with them the structure. They had a working structure. They had a working culture before you arrived, even though nobody was leading. That's what groups do naturally. As sloppy as it may have been, they had a functioning culture. You come in, kick that away, and put in your own. They're rejecting that. I would go back and I'd be curious if we could redesign the culture together. This is you talking to them, what
Hmm.
kind of response you would get. Because again, people can't argue with their own data. So if you invited them to help you build the structure, you'd get more cooperation because they had one before you got there.
Okay.
As haphazard, not written as it was, that's called low context. When it's only known to that group of people, low context culture, that's what they had. You came in and basically booted that, and they're rejecting that. So,
Hmm.
co-author, we're at the beginning of 26, perfect timing, co-author the go forward with them.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course. George? I'm trying to unmute you. There you go.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Price. That was a great presentation. Can I get a copy of the recording as well?
Yeah, I'll put it in the comments, a link to the recording. You can get in there.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course. Let's see. Demetrius, I'm trying to unmute you. Okay, he's gone. How about you, Claretta? I still see your hand.
Hi, yes, thank you. I actually I do have a question though now. But I did also want to request the recording because it was really helpful. And you said you're going to put it in the chat of this call. Is that what?
I'll put it in the chat of the meetup.
Oh, of the meetup. Okay.
Mhm.
I'll try to figure out how to get back to that. I don't use it very much, but I will
Okay.
figure it out. Um,
Or I will put it with each of you. I mean, I've got your names on, it'll show up on my, after Zoom report, and I can just plug a link into for each of you. So you'll get it.
okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. So I was curious. Thank you so much for your counsel for Tanya. And I was just curious for that meeting, um,
The all
would
hands
you,
meeting.
yeah, the all hands meeting, would you start by co-constructing the outcome that we want? I mean, obviously as a leader, I mean, there's only but so much latitude anyway. So, but I mean, would you almost have this, I hate to say facade, but where it looks like we're having a conversation so that they're even bought into the outcome and then building the structure for how we're going to get there? Or I was just kind of interested
Sure.
in what that would look like a little bit more.
Let me ask let's do a bit of work, what that would look like. So
Mm,
if I'm working with you, I give me a quick and dirty, what do you want the outcome of the all hands to be? Probably some team building, right? Um,
mhm.
Probably some translation of the strategic organizational goals. What else? Give me one more that you'd want as a result of the all hands? What should they walk away either knowing or prepared to do after being in this all hands?
Well, I think in addition to what you said, I guess the only other thing that I'm thinking of is related to what you kind of talked about before, but sort of building the collective how so that we're all on the same page. I mean, for me as well, I acknowledge that there's sometimes, almost all the time, there's multiple ways to solve a problem. So I've got my idea and maybe I'm superimposing it and it's working, but everybody doesn't like it or it's not a natural fit, and I've been in situations where, it's like, well, this person, I mean, it's something even as simple as they like this font and they like that font. It's like, you know what? That is a decision that it really doesn't matter. And if you like that, then we can go with that way. You know what I mean? And so working with them so that as long as here's the vision, this is where we're going, and then we work together to figure out how we're going to get there, that's fine. So I mean, I like the team building and the things that you mentioned.
So here's
But,
what I might, if you were my coaching client, I would invite you to start with announcing there's going to be an all hands.
mhm,
You need some time, so a half day, full day, something like that.
mhm,
You might do a quick and dirty survey. What are one or two things, employee, you want us to achieve at the end? And when you get that data back, I'd look for big themes, right? And you might even offer them a couple of suggestions. We want
mhm,
to reestablish an engagement, rules of engagement between each other. We want to establish, a teamwork model or communication model. Give them some choices and then let
mhm,
them add their own choices, right? You get
mhm,
that data back. Now you collate the data. They're going to tell you what they want to achieve. If you're looking for their input and any opportunity to get input, get it. Because
mhm,
then at the meeting, you can say, I heard you and here's what you said, right?
mhm, mhm,
Um, let's say rules of engagement is what they ask for. I'm a believer in pre-work so that people can come to the event ready to ideate, whiteboards and smart boards, that sort of thing,
mhm,
because it feels productive in their body if they're up around a whiteboard with markers, and that's the facilitator in me.
mhm,
With, things on the walls, what have you. I would advance them some articles. I might advance them something to think about, or something that you want them to get feedback on related to engagement. Inside, you definitely want some breakouts. Breakouts give everyone a chance to feed without everyone needing to use their literal throats to do it, right? It gives everyone an opportunity to give input. And because the ideas are rising out of a breakout, no one can claim complete ownership of anything, but it came out of the whole of them, which is what you need to be able to say, right? Um, if related to the other manager's question, I am also a believer of naming it. Name it, name the problem, name it. Just like here in this presentation, I wasn't shy about here's the stuff that plagues managers. It's not you, it's the system, it's the lack of a system. Name what it is. People, it accelerates trust, it accelerates credibility when you are straightforward and people think you're not trying to hide behind niceties and platitudes. Name the issue. But don't let the container of the all hands, it's not a kvetch session. It's a working session. It's a brainstorming. It's a strategy session. Words like that I would use very intentionally because it telegraphs that they're going to have to play. They're going to have to be prime movers inside of that meeting. They can't be passive. And I wouldn't let them be passive. That's why pre-work gives people something to respond to. Breakouts when they're there gives them a container, a controlled container in which they can add and give input in a safe way, but never claim ownership of one thing. There's a whole process, but I would start with the all hands. And I'd say what I said to her before, until you get underneath that problem, performance is secondary. I know it's primary for you, but you won't get to it until you solve that riddle. That monster is going to continue to eat you up. You gotta create a space where they can name it and solve it. They can solve it. And part of what they're mad about is, although um, it looks structureless, all human groups build a structure. It may not have been neat, it may not have been effective, but they had it. And then a new manager is installed, kicks that to the curb, and they're like, well, it worked for us. And that's where that resistance is coming from, at least.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I have other questions, but you've been quite generous and I know we're over time. So thank you so, so much. I really appreciate it.
Happily. Anyone else with a question for the good of the order? Again, I'll keep my commitment. All of the participants will get a link to the video, to the recording, and I hope to connect with you in the future. My intention is to perform more of these kinds of conversations as we go. If there aren't any more questions, I hope that you have a great, peaceful rest of the day. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, George.